What's up? It's Farron, and this is the spoiler version of my impressions for Avengers Endgame. So as I said before, I went into this movie pretty much completely cold, save for seeing the initial teaser trailer thing and the second one. I think I saw the first two, and then that was it. Everything that everyone thought was going to happen at the end of the movie, or maybe towards the middle of the movie, happens at the very beginning of the movie, okay? After Thanos snapped everybody away in the previous movie, Avengers Infinity War, Carol shows up, rescues Stark because he's stranded out in space, right? Just like they showed in the trailer, he's like out there in space, and you're just like, oh no, whoa, what are they gonna do? And she saves him pretty much right away. She's like this shining beacon of light, and she's all glowing, all heavenly and stuff, and he's like, what the heck is that? Waking me up from my sleep. And she goes and she Supermans his butt all the way back to Earth. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that chronologically worked. I'm guessing maybe what happened was, after the end of the stinger for Captain Marvel, she shows up and asks the Avengers, where's Fury, right? And she probably talks with them a bit, and then she goes and finds out, oh, okay, Stark went to Titan, da-da-da-da-da, and she probably has an idea of where that is because she has a lot more spacefaring knowledge than the rest of them. So she goes out and finds this man floating out in space with Nebula. She goes and gets the ship, flies all the way back to Earth, right? Okay, boom. She's straight up like Superman in that bad boy. She's carrying it on her shoulders almost, right? She's like, boom. It's like, okay, that's dope. So she goes and brings him back, and then they get back together. Stark he's all frail, and he's pissed because, you know, he wasn't able to save everybody, and the rest of them weren't there, and he seems to be a bit irrational because it's like, how was everyone else gonna be there, right? Because like Cap and them, they had their own hands full. They had a full-on assault on Wakanda they had to deal with to keep them from getting the stone, which still failed. The Black Order still got the stone, or Thanos did. They were able to keep the Black Order from getting down there because Thor got Stormbreaker, but ultimately Thanos still got the stone. But the fact of the matter is, they had their hands completely full with handling that situation, and other than that, there would have been no way for them to get to Titan or even know that he was on Titan at that time, you know. Except, you know, I mean, maybe Thor could have maybe dealt with it, but Thor had to get the hammer first, or the axe first, so things just didn't sync up, you know. Everyone had their hands full trying to deal with a certain situation. I mean, honestly, if you want to blame anybody, blame Star-Lord and his dumbass for getting too overly emotional when they almost had the gauntlet off of Thanos' arm in Infinity War. Let's blame him. Everybody just blame him. In fact, the movie does a good job of kind of giving him his just dues, because everybody knows, okay, we know he messed up. So anyway, after Carol brings Stark back to Earth, and he's resting, all the Avengers, they come together and they start trying to figure out, like, what do they do next after everything that's happened. And what ends up happening is they're just like in the trailer, they're just like, all right, you know what? Let's go get Thanos. Let's just go get him. We know where he is. Let's go get him. You know, because Nebula knows where he's at, and also he left a massive energy signature after using the gauntlet. Also, the part from the trailer where Thor and Carol are face to face, and you can hear as Carol turns around, you can hear, I have telepathy. Like, that part, it's still in the movie. Like, that part, I thought that was so strange, like, because I was listening to that when I first saw the trailer. That's still in the movie. I made a point to listen for it. It's still there. It's weird. I don't know why that's there. Like, I don't know, is that Carol using her cosmic awareness or something like that? I don't know, but it's totally still in the movie. I just thought that was interesting. This is where people's predictions were going to go in a completely different direction, right? People thought that Carol was going to go and try and fight him and get beaten or killed, or something was going to happen, and or whatever. Nope. They show up to this man's doorstep and they whip him. Now, because, you know, the thing that nobody took into consideration that I thought about before was, after he snapped his fingers, he was messed up. The side of his body maimed, and then the gauntlet was all damaged. And I was thinking to myself, can he even use it again? Because it looked like it took a massive toll after he did that. Like, he expended all of its energy. And nobody ever mentioned that. And that was something I always thought about, because they conscientiously in Infinity War showed it damaged before he teleported away. It turns out that was a massive aspect of it. Like, after he used that, he was weakened, he was all messed up, and almost killed him. So they took him out super easy. And then like, freaking Carol just shows up, puts this man in a rear naked chokehold. They go and they grab both of his arms so he can't use his gauntlet just in case he was trying to. They storm on this man's house like he owed them all money. And then Thor goes for the head, and that's the opening of the movie, basically. And it's just like, damn, they got that out of the way early. But if you think about it, 3-hour movie, right? It kind of figures. It's like, well, what was the real threat? Like, what really happens? And Thanos is still a threat, but not in the way that we might have initially thought. It wasn't that Thanos, right? That Thanos was already done. So what we end up with after that is basically all of the heroes trying to cope with how they continue to live their lives after having so many people that they cared about just snapped away. You know, like, what do they do now? What are they avenging now? You know, the world is kind of disheveled, and one of the things that a lot of people didn't consider is that, you know, the Earth is like that, but it's actually the entire universe is like that. And Carol, who's now sporting this really nice, like, pixie cut kind of thing, I really like it. I was kind of like happy to see that they gave her the short hair, because Captain Marvel ends up with the short hair, and I like that. I like that she looks good with it. She's actually out there, you know, spacefaring and trying to deal with things out in other galaxies around the universe, because everybody in the whole universe was affected, not just Earth. And so they're all trying to cope with how to handle everything that's going on, you know, and it's clear that it's affecting a lot of people, or the Avengers in particular, where it's really weighing heavily on them because they couldn't protect everybody. And there's so many people who they cared about who are gone now. I mean, you have Steve Rogers in a support group with Joe Russo. You know what I mean? It's like, you know you having some emotional, psychological issues when you Captain America and you but anyway, yeah, so it's weighing really heavily on them. So then, what I think most people predicted or theorized, Scott Lang, who, and this is why, like, seeing some of the other movies help, Scott Lang, because if you didn't see some of the other movies, you know, you wouldn't know, oh wait, what's the quantum realm, who's Ant-Man, blah blah blah. So it helps to see some of the other movies, because if you saw Ant-Man and the Wasp, you know that at the end of Ant-Man, Scott Lang as Ant-Man is in the quantum realm, and he's supposed to get, you know, they're supposed to help him get out, while, you know, Hank Pym and I believe that was Jeanette. I think that's supposed to be Jeanette Van Dyne, and they're supposed to help him get back out, right? So they're monitoring him, and they get snapped, and all you see is just dust, and you're just like, oh, but he didn't. Now everybody could assume, like, maybe he just was one of those who were just fortunate, right? But the fact that he was in the quantum realm and every single other one of them who was standing right there and getting snapped, it makes you wonder, like, oh wait, the quantum realm might actually be a thing that they might use in this movie. And turns out that's exactly what they do, and that's what makes this movie basically it's a time travel, or as Scott Lang says, like a time heist, as he says to Tony Stark. It's a time heist. So that's what it's a time heist movie. So Scott Lang, because he was in the quantum realm, or at least that's what's theorized, he's able to somehow find his way out of the quantum realm. But 5 years have passed since Thanos was killed. So Scott Lang came out of the quantum realm, and he goes and tries to find the rest of the Avengers. So he goes and he finds Steve Rogers and Natasha. He explains to them, hey, I was in the quantum realm, yada yada yada, and the reason why I feel like that might be a thing that can help us is because not only was I in the quantum realm and I didn't get snapped, but 5 years is only 5 hours for me. And that's when they're just like, wait, what? And so they have to, it starts with him trying to convince the rest of the Avengers to try and use the quantum realm to their advantage to essentially reverse everything that has happened, but not by going back in the past and trying to reverse the present, to make, like, restructure the present, with which Hulk, who is now Smart Hulk or whatever you call him, and I think this might be my favorite version of the Hulk, where he's essentially he's like Bruce Banner, like Mark Ruffalo Bruce Banner in terms of his personality, but he's got the physique that's more akin to the Hulk. And it's kind of cool. He's like a celebrity, and, you know, he's got this menacing kind of physique, but a very chill demeanor. It's kind of cool to see him kind of make that change, and that's one of the things a lot of characters you see throughout all of these movies, which is another really cool thing about seeing all the different movies over this past 10 years, is that you get to see the characters change so much. You get to see their different suits, but not only different suits, but the different things they go through, and how even their physiques change. You know, the way they look totally changes, and you see that very much so with Bruce Banner and the Hulk, as well as with with Thor, which I'll get to in a moment. But Hulk, he explains that even though time travel is out of his jurisdiction of expertise, he knows enough to realize that in this particular case, going to the past is not going to change the future or the present, like it just never happened. It ends up creating a different path like a different structure, time structure, like a parallel timeline per se, or so to speak. So it creates a parallel timeline, and so if you go back in the past and you change something, it doesn't change your present, it creates a new present, basically. And so he's like, yeah, we can't just go back and just wish everybody back or change everything and everything's all hunky-dory. I don't think I've ever used the term hunky-dory before. But instead, it's going to make a new alternate reality, or an alternate timeline. So Steve, Natasha, and Scott go around trying to gather the Avengers back again, explaining to them what their plan is. So they try and convince everybody, Stark being the most reluctant to join, and Clint Barton, I believe that's his name, Clint Barton, Hawkeye, now as Ronin, is the most accepting, I guess you could say, of the plan. He just jumps right in. He's like, look, let's just do it, because he lost his family. So he's ready to go. He's willing to be the test subject for these the time travel experiments that they have to take before they can even attempt to do this for real. By the way, I gotta say, Ronin is so much cool. Like Hawkeye's cool, and I always liked how he used the bow, but Ronin, man, the suit, I always thought just the concept of Ronin was just cooler. I mean, it might just be my Asian sensibilities. I just think he's just much cooler that way, and the way they introduce him is actually really dope too. So once they finally finish the experiments and they get everybody on board, they get the Avengers basically back together, they commence with the whole time heist plot, right? So the Avengers utilize quantum technology, which allows them to zip through time, going back through time, with these cool new quantum time suits, with the goal of gathering the Infinity Stones at points in time throughout history from the previous Marvel movies, right, before Thanos acquired them. Then take all of those stones, go back to the present timeline, and construct an Infinity Gauntlet-like gauntlet that that can harness the Infinity Stones' power and unsnap everybody. Then take all of the stones back from the gauntlet and redistribute them back to each timeline that they came from, so that it doesn't create a potentially disastrous alternate timeline, potentially messing up everything. Now, being that this is a time travel plot, just like a lot of movies, time travel can get really messy if not done well. And I gotta say, I think the Russos and everybody involved, they did a great job of keeping it very tight, very concise, and not confusing at all. Actually, not for me, it was actually rather well explained. And it's done well, especially considering it's this grand finale and everything that happened. There's a lot of stuff that go on. You know, you have the characters attempt this massive time travel heist to gather these Infinity Stones, and not everything goes according to plan. You know, and so they still are able to figure out a new point in time to go to, so that they can get the stone predating the time when they messed up. Oh yeah, and Thor got fat, drinks beer and eats pizza and plays Fortnite all day. Which is just a complete far cry from what he was in Ragnarok. Like, it's almost like they intentionally were like, alright, let's completely flip the script on what he used to be. They took the outgoing, hammer-twirling god of thunder and they essentially just turned him into a introverted fat house cat. So all the Avengers end up in different time periods, and those time periods correspond with the different movies that have actually come out over the past 10 years. So Steve, Stark, Bruce, and Scott all end up going to back in time during the first Avengers movie with the battle in New York. So the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D., which was actually Hydra, but they didn't know that back then, but now they do, which kind of ties into it. If you saw Winter Soldier, they know that that's actually Hydra. They're apprehending Loki at the time, right when they did that in the Avengers movie, and Stark is like, you know, he's looking from behind the scenes with Scott as Ant-Man on his shoulder, and they're just kind of looking, and Stark is all like, man, Cap, that suit, he's got that, because, you know, that's back when he had that Party City suit from the first Avengers movie. So Stark's all like, Steve, that suit is not flattering for your ass. And then Scott's all like, actually, Captain America, sir, as far as I'm concerned, that's America's ass. And so as S.H.I.E.L.D. / Hydra are putting everything away and apprehending, you know, getting everything set up, the Avengers have to covertly apprehend the Infinity Stones, right? Steve has to go after. He goes after the scepter, Loki's scepter, right? And it has the Mind Stone in it. And so he ends up going in the elevator with the which I believe was supposed to be kind of like a shot from Winter Soldier, I believe, right? Or at least it played similar to it. But instead of having to face those guys in the elevator, which was a dope scene in Winter Soldier, he already knows they're Hydra. So he just plays to that, and he's like, "Hail Hydra," kind of plays, he plays directly into it, which I guess kind of plays off of the comics when he does the Hail Hydra thing in the comics, from what I hear. But by doing that, they're just like, "Oh, he knows what we're about," and they just give him the suitcase with the staff in it, and so he just walks on out with Loki's staff or Loki's scepter. Easy peasy for him, except Steve ends up having to fight against his past self, so the younger Steve. And they have this dope fight, Captain America versus Captain America. And young Cap from the first Avengers movie is all like, "I could do this all day." and current Cap is all like, yeah, man, I know. Because he's older and he's just like, "I don't got time for this mess." So older Cap outwits younger Cap. After he knocks him out, he's kind of lumped over, like younger Cap is kind of lumped over, like he's laid out. And older Cap just looks down at younger Cap and he's like, "You know what? That is America's ass." He just walks away. And I was sitting there in the audience, I was looking, I was just like, yup, he right about that. So anyway, ultimately, Cap, he gets the stone that's in the scepter. So he gets that stone. I believe that's the Mind Stone. Meanwhile, Bruce is talking with the Ancient One, who was actually there during the battle in New York as well. And Bruce is able to convince the Ancient One to hand over the Time Stone to him. And the only reason she does it is because she begins to realize that if Stephen Strange handed over the Time Stone to Thanos to begin with, then he must have had a grand plan in place. And it convinces her to go ahead and give Bruce the stone. But unfortunately, Stark and Scott, they failed to get theirs due to certain events that they didn't see coming. I didn't really see coming either. It was unfortunate, but they ended up losing the stone to Loki. And then Loki just vamooses, and they're just like, crap, now what do we do? He could be anywhere. So they come up with a spontaneous plan B, which has, it sees both Stark and Steve actually go back in time much further to Captain America's movie, which was, back before, I guess even before Captain America was before Steve had been a part of the Super Soldier Project. I guess it predates that. It's like right before that, I guess. Because the Tesseract was also in that movie, they're able to reclaim the Tesseract from, I guess that was S.H.I.E.L.D., like old school S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. And so Stark is able to reclaim it, and then he goes and this is where you start to get a hint of like some of the things that are going to happen later in the movie, because both Stark and Steve are both presented with people from their past that mean a lot to them, that are no longer with them, in the form of Howard Stark, I believe it's Tony Stark's father, and Peggy Carter, which was Steve Rogers' lover. He really cared for her, and he had to leave her behind, unfortunately, when he after he went to that mission for the Tesseract and stopping the Red Skull, and ended up being frozen alive and all that stuff. So they get a chance to be face to face once again, though just for a little while before they have to go back to their own time. Meanwhile, Rocket and Thor go to Asgard during Thor Dark World, and they go get the stone from there. It's actually kind of funny because you see Steve have this moment seeing, this emotional moment seeing Peggy Carter all over again, and how it affects him emotionally. He really deeply cares for her. And then you have Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster, I believe it is. And Jane and Thor don't have a moment at all. They show her, but there's no moment whatsoever. So I guess there's nothing happening between those two in the MCU. So I just thought that was interesting. Also, you get to see that Thor is still worthy to wield Mjolnir. I think that's how you say it, Mjolnir, his hammer, once again, which I think was a boon to his spirits, because he sees that he's still worthy, and it makes him feel like, okay, maybe I can do this. And he gets to see his mother again, who I believe was killed. I don't remember how she died, but he gets to see her again. So that really helps him, to realize what he really needs to do. Meanwhile, again, at another point in time, you have Rhodey and Nebula, who are in basically during the times of, I believe, the first Guardians movie, sometime around then. You get to see them go get their stone, which was fairly easy for them, except this is where the plot twist starts kind of really twisting. You have Nebula, her systems, like her programming, gets weirdly crosswired with the past Nebula, and it keeps her from being able to escape, and this alerts that Gamora and Thanos of the past to the present's plans. Not only that, they're able to take the quantum technology that Nebula had, and use that to actually bring themselves into the present time. And it's funny because the only time you ever see Star-Lord in this movie, Chris Pratt, is when he's getting when he's getting smacked or hit, and they show him just like skipping and dancing to music, and it just crack him right upside his head. Which was well deserved. Actually, it was well deserved. So while that's happening, Natasha and Clint end up going to Vormir, was it? I can't remember the name of the place. I think it might have been Vormir, where you have Red Skull, who is like he's the guide of Vormir. People who are searching for the stone, the Infinity Stone, he leads them to it. And then you have to, if anyone see Infinity War, you know that you have to sacrifice somebody that's incredibly important to you, or something that's very important to you, to gain the stone. In Thanos' case in Infinity War, it was Gamora. Apparently he really cared for her. Whereas here, you have Clint and Natasha. So the whole time I was watching that, I was thinking to myself, like, which one are they going to choose? And instantly, in my mind, I was like, well, Clint has nothing left to live for, right? Because he lost his family. But then at the same time, I thought to myself, wait a minute, but then Clint also has everything to gain, because if this all works out, he has his family back. And it seems like Joe and Anthony Russo and them, they must have thought the same thing, because ultimately Natasha ends up being the one who is sacrificed. Because if you think about it, as much I really like Scarlett Johansson's character as Black Widow in the movies. I think she's sexy, she's badass, but if you think about it, I guess she has less to gain. She's, I guess, no family that really means anything to her. I mean, there's the Avengers, that's basically her family, Shield, I guess, but no family like a lover, kids. And Clint, he had those things, and those things were taken from him by Thanos, so he had so much to gain. And so this was getting all this to work out would be a happy ending for Clint, and so she ends up being sacrificed so that he can get the stone. They both fought for it. They both didn't want to let the other one go, but ultimately it was Clint who survived, and Natasha, Black Widow, who was sacrificed. So after it's all said and done, they all come together back to their present time, and they take all the stones that they've accumulated, and they take this gauntlet that I guess Stark had been designing, because it looks like an Iron Man type of suit gauntlet thing, which is really cool looking. And they place the stones in it, and they need someone to wear it. So Thor he volunteers. He really feels like he's got to be the one to do it. He's very emotionally tied to this whole plot, with everything that happened with Thanos. He feels very responsible, so I guess he felt like he's got to be the one to do it, and he could have probably done it, even though he was in not ideal shape at the time, but ultimately Bruce Hulk, he ends up doing it, which was also probably a good choice, because he's one of the most durable between the two of them. They're probably the most durable heroes that were there. And so Hulk ends up doing it, and so interestingly enough, the gauntlet still fits him. It elongates and contracts and retracts or whatever, and so it fits his hand, and all that power is like running through him, and he's still able to snap. And it does the same thing to him that it did to Thanos, when it pretty much just like eats up your that side of your body. It gets all burned up and charred, and if you're not a really, really strong, durable individual, chances are it'll probably kill you. You know, and Thanos mentioned at the beginning of the movie, it almost killed him, regardless, even though he's a really durable, really powerful creature. And the same thing with Hulk, where he's like, it pretty much, it knocked this man off his feet, right? It burned him up, you know? So clearly not just anybody can use all of that power all at once. It's way too much power. So he snaps, and you see that Clint's cell phone starts going off, and it's his wife, I believe. And that's kind of confirms, it's like, oh, wow, it worked. And right at that point, Thanos rains fire on their entire base, just tears up everything. So ultimately, they end up getting from underneath the rubble, and you have Thor, Captain America, and you have Iron Man. And they see Thanos out in the distance, and it's just like, okay, this is it. This is what it all comes down to right now. And it's the past Thanos who's now been completely informed on the future, his future events, our present events. Or technically past, because it happened in the movie 5 years before the present. So he becomes fully aware of all those things, and he's ready. He's battle ready. He's got his double-sided blade. He's got his armor. He's got his troops. He's ready. So Thor and everybody, they get ready. And even though Thor was looking like, according to like what Rocket Raccoon said, like a tub of like melted ice cream in the whole movie, it actually kind of works out, because when he powers up, he gets both hammers now, which is really dope. He gets the Stormbreaker and Mjolnir from two different sides of the world, and he just grabs both of them, and then he ends up looking like a Viking, because it's basically what he is. So they gave him like a Viking look for real, which is actually kind of dope. How they kind of bring that full circle. He ends up looking crazy at the beginning of the movie, and then end up looking kind of badass later on in a way. So they go to take on Thanos, man. He's really, the thing that's interesting is he's actually really like struggled for them to beat. You know, one of the things I thought about with Infinity War was Thanos with the Stormbreaker. It seemed like he would just storm straight through, no pun intended, storm straight through Thanos. But I believe, I remember hearing somewhere that the Russo brothers were saying that part of why Thanos got hit so easily was because he was taken off guard by Thor's attack. And if that's true, this movie proves it, because even with all three of them there, Thor couldn't beat Thanos, even with Stormbreaker. He didn't just win. Like they were having a hard time with this guy. He was out for blood. Thanos was not playing no games. And he even mentioned this time, any of his crusade and all of the worlds he's conquered and all this, whatever, he never took it personally. But this time, it's personal. So he was going all in, right? And it's appropriate, because it's personal for the Avengers too. This right here, man, this final act of the movie, whew, boy, let me tell you, this right here pays for the price of admission alone. This end of the movie, this whole final act by itself is just, it's worth just seeing this by itself. The whole movie is excellent, but this part, man, this was it right here. This was it. It's one of those things where, like, I'm not going to talk about everything that happened, but man, this is one of those things where I'm glad I saw it like opening weekend, because I've never done that before. And being in a packed theater, man, you got to see how everyone reacted to the things that was happening on screen. And there was stuff that I got really excited for, and the audience got really excited too. And you're just like, it's one of those things that, you know, like the movie wanted you to get excited, and it worked. They nailed it. And you're like, this, whew, so good, man, so good. There was a part, man, one of the best. Some of the parts that like the audience applauded, and like what parts that I was really excited for, was when Thor and Steve and Tony Stark were fighting Thanos. There was a part where Mjolnir is like, it's caught. You see it flies off, and as it looks like Thanos is about to finish off Thor, and Mjolnir flies off, and you see a hand grab it, and it goes down, and you see it's Captain America, and you're like, oh my god, dude, I had chills. It was so sick. It was so awesome. The whole theater just erupted in applause. That part, and Thanos, Thor was like, I knew it. And then that's one of those things where it's just like, it's a callback to, I don't even know what movie it was. Was that the first Avengers movie? I can't even remember. Or maybe that was Age of Ultron. I can't remember, but it was when they were like all sitting together, and Steve tried to, pull the hammer up. Like everybody tried to do it. Stark tried to do it. He had like his Iron Man armor. He tried to pull it up with the arm, and Steve tried to pull it, and it didn't look like it budged, but you could see the unsettled like face, like the unsettled expression of Thor. Like he was looking like, oh wait, He wasn't laughing anymore when Steve went to try and lift it. And now He could actually wield it, and boy, was he wielding it, man. My man was twirling it, he was flinging it, he was knocking it off his shield, he was throwing the shield, hitting the shield with the hammer, ricocheting the shield with the hammer, with the shield. I was like, man, please. It was, oh my god, that was so sick. The choreography was so cool. It was awesome. And then the other part that was super dope, the other part that was like standing ovation, was you could see the portals, like the Doctor Strange portals appear, and you saw the Avengers walk, like certain Avengers walk through, and everybody just stood up, like just long applause, because it was so cool. You just saw them all coming back, and you just see portal after portal after portal. You see like Panther walk in, everyone was like, oh my god, everyone was clapping. You see Doctor Strange flew in, he's flying in looking all dope, everybody's applauding. Spider-Man swoops through, everybody's like, woo, yeah. Oh my goodness, it was so sick, man. Everybody in the audience was just like so happy to see everybody come through. You just see all these portals, and all the Avengers are just coming in, man. They're just coming in. And then the Black Order comes in. You see the whole then Thanos brings his whole squad in, like all of his troops, everybody just coming in. So it's the Black Order and all of Thanos' minions versus all the Avengers, like everybody. You see Valkyries come back in, even Pepper Potts, she got like the rescue armor, which looked really dope. And I'm like, everybody was there, dude. Everybody was there. Wasp was there. They all were there. And they're all just this massive fight, man. It's just massive fight. Giant, like Ant-Man goes giant. He's smashing through stuff. And then Scarlet Witch shows back up. And you know, boy, she got a bone to pick with Thanos. Oh, she got a bone to pick with Thanos. My girl was like, you know what? I remember what you did. And she was not playing no goddamn games. She was like, she floated this dude up. She was like, I'm gonna rip you apart. And he was just like, at that point, Thanos was like, he was just like, rain fire. And then the Black Order was like, but sire, you know, it'll hit us too. Like, and he was just like, just do it. And then he had that giant dreadnought ship that he comes in, that massive war ship, just starts blasting everybody. He's just blasting everybody. He's just wiping out everyone. Everybody's getting wiped out. The Black Order, the Avengers, everybody's just getting blasted. And then everything just stops. And then you see the guns target up into the air and start shooting in the air. And everybody's like, wait a minute, what are they possibly shooting at? What could possibly be more important up in the sky than what's going on right here on the ground? We're having a war right now. And then you see that shining, fiery star descend from the sky. And you see Captain Marvel. My girl just slices right through that ship. One just bow. Cuts the whole ship down. That thing sinks in like a crappy souffle. Just blah, falls in right through the middle. And she just looks down and like, yeah, you know you done messed up, right? The whole theater just erupted in applause. Just erupted. It was so sick. The whole part was so awesome. Just seeing her come down like that and just take that ship out like nothing. And then you see all the female like heroes all rally at Captain Marvel's location, and it's dope, man. It's dope. And they all just storm in. And they're all just taking it to Thanos, man. And they're trying to get the gauntlet to safety because it's got all the stones in it. And so Black Panther grabs it. He's doing some cool parkour stuff trying to get it to safety. And then he gets hit. And then like Spider-Man gets it. He's swinging around trying to avoid danger. And then ultimately Thanos ends up getting it. And he ends up putting it on. And you have like, you know, the different characters trying to like tussle with him to keep him from like snapping his fingers or anything. And one of the parts that I thought was really cool was Captain Marvel. She goes and she goes and grabs it to try and keep him from snap his fingers, and he headbutts her. Like that's good. Like he's like, oh, headbutts her to get her off him, and she just stands there and just looks at him like, really, bro? Didn't do a damn thing. And so she leaps up and pushes him down with her strength, and he takes a knee. And I was like, damn, man, like she's strong as hell, dude. But he thinks quickly because he grabs what I believe is the Power Stone. He grabs it out of the gauntlet, puts it in his other hand, and then you can see she's like surprised, and he just punches her one good time at the Power Stone, knocks her like back into the sky, because you got to get her out of the way because she's too strong, right? So he has to get her out of the way so he can do what he's got to do. And I believe like the Power Stone, that was a good choice because the Power Stone, I guess it's just raw power, I guess. So it was able to like push her away regardless how strong she is. That's pretty much where the end of the movie comes in, because he gets the stone and he's about to snap his fingers, and Iron Man shows up and he tries to tussle for the gauntlet as well. And that whole time you're thinking to yourself, if Captain Marvel couldn't get it off, Stark, what the hell are you doing? And so he gets knocked away, and then right when Thanos is about to snap his fingers, he realizes he doesn't have any of the stones in his gauntlet, and all of them are floating around Stark's armor, because apparently the whole time Stark had created a type of Infinity Gauntlet light version on his armored suit, and it was able to utilize all the stones the whole time, and so he didn't need the gauntlet, and he was able to snap all of the Black Order out of existence, including Thanos. But after all that awesomeness, man, because it was amazing. Stark, he's not Hulk, he's not Thor, he's nothing like that, he's not like Captain Marvel or any Thanos, and these characters that are like these really powerful cosmic strength characters or whatever. He's a human. So after using it, it burnt him up, it messed him up, man, and he ended up not making it. And I didn't cry, but it was interesting. I talked with some friends who also went to see the movie. It actually got to them, man. And I was just like, dang. And I understand because it's Stark, man. Like this whole time I've been like, man, it's gonna be weird having the MCU not have Stark, because he's got some of the coolest stuff, like some of the CGI and his armor, some of the coolest effects in all of the MCU in movies, period. And his humor really helped to define the MCU, and without him, it's just like, dang, man. But they really got rid of him, and it's just like, I guess it had to happen eventually, and it's just crazy to finally see that how he went out. He went out in a blaze of glory, let me tell you. And after it all kind of wrapped up, they had a funeral for him, and everybody attended, and it was kind of cool. They were all kind of grouped together in their groups, based on, I guess, kind of like the movies that they're from. He had a hologram that said goodbye to his family, and at the end of it, Captain America had to go back and redistribute all the stones, because remember, at the beginning of the movie, like they came up with this plan, but the plan required them to redistribute the stones back to where they came from, so it doesn't create a warped alternate timeline and just turn everything into disarray, potentially. So he goes and he does that, but in the midst of all that, he decides to have a normal life, and so he grows old, and he lives his days out as an older gentleman, and he's ready to pass on the shield. And I knew this was going to happen eventually. I knew the movie was going to come where this was going to happen. I always said, I had discussions with friends and stuff about this, and I was just like, eventually he's got to pass the shield on to either Anthony Mackie's character as Falcon or Sebastian Stan's character as Winter Soldier, because both of them become Captain America in the comics at one point. And so eventually they've got to do something with that, I believe Chris Evans he's been mentioning for a while that he's going to, at some point in time, his movie contract is gonna end, and he's gonna move on to other things, I guess directing maybe. And so it was like, this is the final movie of this phase. It's probably gonna happen now, and this is when it happened. And it's just like, you could see literally how they framed it, how Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie were standing side by side, and Cap is off in the distance, just sitting down, looking at the lake. And you're just like, the way they set it up, you could see the directors were like, okay, this is where it's basically the movie saying if they're choosing which one is going to take up the mantle. And I always said it would make more sense if Winter Soldier took up the mantle, because it would make sense as to what they were trying to do with his character. Like, they were trying to redeem him as a character, being, this brainwashed soldier that killed Stark's parents and all this, and how Captain America, Steve Rogers, he went through so much to help redeem him, he never gave up on him. So I always felt like it would be his chance to redeem himself for sure by taking up the mantle as Captain America. But there was always the possibility that it would become that Falcon would become Captain America, even though he hasn't known him for nearly as long. It was interesting that they decided to do that, and I think they were trying to subvert expectation by having it be Falcon instead. Because it's interesting, because when he was standing right there and he was turned and he looked at Falcon, Winter Soldier, he turns and he looks at Falcon, and he just kind of nods, like, go ahead, go ahead and talk to him. And he's he's like, really? You sure? He's like, yeah, go ahead. And he walks over to him, and he goes and he's presented with the shield. And it's basically that instance where whoever walked over to him was the one who's going to get the shield. And even Bucky kind of like offered it. He's like, you know what, I know I've known him longer, but I want you to have it. And I thought that was an interesting decision. I'm not really sure if it makes it so much sense, but it's cool with me. It's cool. It's interesting that they went that route. I'm interested to know what they're going to do with Winter Soldier moving forward, because as a superhero, I don't know if he's as well known, like what they're going to do with his character. But either way, the shield is passed on to Falcon. He's, I guess, moving forward, he's going to be the new Captain America. So we're going to see some flying and some shield swinging and throwing and all that stuff. So that might be kind of cool to see, like the kind of how they choreograph his flying mixed with the shield throwing and all that. But ultimately, that's where the movie ends. You get to see Peggy and Steve dancing, and they were able to have a life together, you know, and the movie ends, and it's just like it was just an applause, man. It was just like, it was great. It was excellent. You know, it was an excellent movie. So much happened, you know, and I feel like it tied everything up rather neatly, you know, all things considered, man. I mean, it was so much to cover, and I think they did a really great job. I love the movie, man. It was awesome. I can't really think of too many negatives on the movie to even really go over. I mean, if anything, I would have liked to have seen maybe I wanted to actually see like Fury and Carol have some banter, but they never actually see that happen. There really wasn't a whole lot of room for much of anything else because it was really tight movie. So like I said, there's really not much I could say about that. But I don't know if they actually explain like how Valkyrie got off of Thor's ship when it got attacked by Thanos. I don't know if they ever explained like how'd she get off the ship though. So I don't know, like she was on the ship after during the end of the Ragnarok, right? But they don't explain how she got off of it. So I don't know. And also they don't explain why they couldn't have gone back in time and got to Vision and had Shuri go and like basically get Vision earlier on, go to Shuri earlier on, have the stone pulled from Vision without him dying, you know, because they do it the proper way, have Vision on their team plus have the stone and the gauntlet instead of just having the stone. I don't know, like maybe it wouldn't have worked out that way, but it just, that's I guess kind of the nature of like having the time travel plot where you have a lot of what ifs. They could have did this or they could have did that. But again, overall, I think it was an excellent movie, really well done. I really don't have much in the way of complaints. The things I'm mentioning are more nitpicks, if anything, and they probably are explained in the movie. I only saw it once. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much my impressions on the film Avengers Endgame. Let me know what you guys think. Sound off in the comment sections. And yeah, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Farron out. Man, this long ass video.